I'm not waiting till I die. I want to watch my kids enjoy their wealth.
When did you personally hit $1 billion?
Probably...
Did it make you want to get rich?
No.
Really? They say it's rude to ask what things cost, but as a Wall Street Journal reporter, that's literally the only thing I want to know. How much is your watch collection worth? How many million?
We're all allowed one vice, aren't we?
Kenn Ricci is the man behind an empire of private jet companies, including Flexjet. He doesn't just cater to the 0.1% club. He's a card-carrying member with a net worth above $1 billion. As the number of ultra-wealthy people surges to a record high, Kenn is betting on increased demand. Today, we're going to break down how he got here and reveal what spending in that tax bracket actually looks like. So let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
I want to hear how you made your first million.
So, come out of the Air Force. I work for Northwest Orient. For a brief period of time, I get furloughed. Unemployed, back living with my parents. I put myself out as a contract pilot called Professional Flight Crews. One of the companies I was flying for was called Corporate Wings. They ended up wanting to sell the company, and I bought the company for $27,500.
I bet you're wondering, where did he even get that $27,500 to buy that company in the first place? Here's how. Kenn noticed that the company had $27,000 of cash on its books, so he bought the company with a loan and used that money to pay it back later. And the last $500, he called his dad to see if he'd spot him. I'll let Kenn fill you in on how that paid off.
By the early 90s, it's doing $3 million a year in revenue. I morphed Corporate Wings to be servicing concert tours. I had done Barbra Streisand, Elton John, and that's when one of the companies that I had contracted with said, have you ever done a political campaign? So I asked them right away, well, how long is the campaign? And they said, it's 13 months. Well, that's a really good contract. And I said, well, what's the guy running for? He says, well, he's running for president. And I said, well, who is it? He said, well, it's the governor of Arkansas. I said, the governor of Arkansas is not going to need a plane for 13 months. This guy has no chance of becoming president. And then I flew him to the inauguration. Coming out of Clinton, the company started to gain traction where I needed more and more employees.
Okay.
And that's when I started to grow the business.
Around that same time, another private jet company, NetJets, was gaining ground.
I'm starting to think about what's the product I can have that compete with NetJets. And that's when I came up with the idea of flight options. So in '97, I'm out trying to raise $30, $40, $50 million to underwrite this idea. Nobody was having it. And then in the summer of 1998, Warren Buffett buys NetJets. And my proposal just happened to be on everybody's doorstep. I was the last guy there. In the summer of '98, I had $50 million from Boeing, $50 million from Bombardier. I mean, it was amazing the amount of $50 million lines of credit I had because Buffett endorsed the industry. But concurrent with that, I had started the Inertial Navigation Company by having aftermarket repairs of this very particular device. I would have never known to start that business if I wasn't in the cockpit trying to understand how it fails.
He's talking about this company, Inertial Airline Services, which he started in 1990 after he saw how expensive it was to fix airline navigation systems. But then his company Flight Options took off.
We did $100 million in the first 3 months. And then I realized I can't run any other company. That's why I sold the Inertial Navigation Company the following year for like around $10 million. So that was probably the first significant wealth of any size.
At this point, Kenn was aggressively competing with NetJets, and in 2002, his company merged with Raytheon in a bet that it would accelerate his business.
We merged the two companies, 50% to Flight Options and 50% went to Raytheon, which was the owner of Traveler at the time. And I don't know if you're familiar with shareholders roulette. When you have 50-50 owners, one person puts a number out there and the other person either gets to buy or sell at that number. So I had the obligation to present Raytheon with the number within 18 months of the closing. I had gotten the valuation underwritten by Warburg Pincus for $360 million. I offer Raytheon $180 million for their half of the business, and they thought I was stealing it and they bought me out. So I lose the whole thing in 2002, and it was the worst day of my life. But what's crazy about that was, at the time that happened, I had already sold, I had raised equity, and I really only owned about 16%. So when the proceeds came in, it was about $20 million.
Instead of catching up to NetJets, he was ousted from the company he founded. But he ended up using that money to start his next venture, Directional Aviation Capital, which invests in aviation companies. You start Directional Capital with
With
20
the money,
million?
yes, with the money that came in from the Raytheon, from the sale. One of the first deals we found was Mercury Air Centers. And in 2007, we sold it to Macquarie, and that was sold for $625 million. We had about $200 million of debt, so there was about $400 million of proceeds. So that was a big payday. That changed life significantly.
I want to hear what you did to celebrate the Macquarie deal.
I know exactly what I did. I'm embarrassed to say. They'll tell you that when you have a big liquidity event, that you do nothing for 6 months, just because you're going to do something stupid. And I did something stupid. So I went down and we took a 2-week vacation, Mike and I, and our wives, to Cabo San Lucas, and I bought a house. And I still have it. We still go down there, and the families kind of spend a lot of time there. But yeah, that was my celebration.
How much did you pay for the house?
$3.5 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Like 80-ish, but Mike and I are partners too, so that wasn't all mine, right?
And you spent $3 million on the house. Not bad.
I know, but you're not supposed to do that.
You're not. Soon after, Kenn clawed his way back to flight options. This time, he bought Raytheon out. But the company was struggling at this point, and his effort to turn things around would end up changing his plan entirely.
The first thing was to figure out what the plane situation was. So the right plane for us at the time was made by Bombardier. But Bombardier had a competing company called Flexjet. I visit Bombardier and I said, would you let me buy these Challenger 300s, even though it would be competing with a company you own? And they said, all right, we'll sell you the planes, but you have to buy Flexjet too. And so in 2014, that's how I come to buy Flexjet. They kind of made me buy it. I say made me, it was transformational, right? Because they had a big corporate base. They had an outstanding reputation. It's one of the reasons why we collapsed the flight options name and came up under Flexjet.
When did you personally hit $1 billion net worth?
In 2021, when the business was probably doing maybe $170 or $180 million of EBITDA, but we also had these very expensive subordinated debt. We had to borrow money at 15-16% to be able to buy the Flexjet property. So we decided to recapitalize the company in order to pay that debt down, and that recapitalization was done in the close to a $2 billion valuation, which with my ownership of the company put me close to $1 billion. Maybe not quite, maybe $800 million or so at the time.
How did that feel?
I don't think you even recognize it.
I don't believe that.
But I think there's two parts of your net worth.
Yeah.
And I think, because sometimes we just want to focus on the headline number. You really have two net worths. Someone like me. Like I have money that's not related to Flexjet. It's the homes you have, it's the cash you have, it's your investments. And then you have the part of the net worth that you never want to liquidate because you want to keep growing Flexjet. I think the company's just halfway through its growth cycle. So there'd be no reason to want to liquidate that. And that goes up and down, and it varies, right, depending upon a good month, a bad month.
I think your values stay the same, but I think the things that you can do and the generosity that you can have to your alma mater or your children or your colleagues, right? Like money does change things.
It does. If you want to talk about where it's really changed, right? It's the fact that, so my children are older, so they're, my youngest is 24. And so they're all at the age where we've chosen as a family not to disguise and not to hide from our wealth. And so we have family meetings every quarter, and we're passing on wealth at this point in time. I'm not waiting till I die. I want to watch my kids enjoy their wealth.
Wow.
And so we're passing on wealth to them now, and we're helping them manage through it, and we're helping them navigate. We have a family limited partnership that any of the kids can borrow from to start businesses. And that's probably, if you say that where does the net worth become the focus, it's at those meetings. When we sit there and we talk about you can get your hands on net worth, and what are we preserving here, and how are we using it, and exactly where are we giving money to, which I've made them do since they were young.
I want to hear just a little bit more about these family meetings.
Okay.
How often do they happen? Do you have an agenda?
We have them quarterly. Every year, once a year at the big meeting, I walk through the estate plan. What's going to happen? Like, where does the money go? How does it get there? I start the meeting by showing my net worth, and I show them where the assets are, what companies we own, what the liquid money is, who has the liquid money, how do you get to it if I'm not here, where, who's the guys you call, like where does the money go, how do you get your share, and then after I do that, I have all of them expose their net worth. And then they tell their siblings what they invested in, what they're spending their money on, and then typically after that, pass on some wealth at those meetings. Very important that they're not treated equally, because life doesn't work that way. One's 12 years older than the other one, so one had 12 years of appreciation over the younger one. That doesn't mean we don't love you, it just means it's not going to be equal. So don't stand here like the three of you are equal, right? It's a lot of money for all of you. So I want to make sure none of them get pissed off about the fact that who has more than the other. So we go right down where it all falls, how the taxes hit each one, and why things go there. I want them to understand it. Otherwise, when I'm gone, they're going to fight. A lot of my peer group does not do that. They do not. Like, they will not share family net worth. They feel like it could spoil their kids. If their kids knew how much money they were going to get, they might live their life differently. I've just chosen to think about it. If I didn't raise the kids right, I'm not going to correct them by not telling them what their net worth is.
So you want to talk to your kids about money regularly? It's
very important. It's more important than sex. But yeah, we talk about sex all the time, and we never talk about money in our families. It's kind of bizarre.
We've talked a lot about how you made your money. I want to get to the fun stuff, how you spend it. Let's start with donations, something I know is super important to you. How much money did you donate last year?
Around $3 million. I'm on 2 boards. They're both in education, and we put a predominant amount of our money there. That was the amount last year.
But you made a really big gift.
We did a $100 million donation. That was the opportunity to make a statement that what universities really need is discretionary money, not money that's pigeonholed or targeted. That's why we did that.
So how much did you spend on your vacations last year?
We could kind of say my whole life is a vacation, but I would tell you that the definable vacation that I really do take is that we spend the summer in Italy, about 6 weeks. It's probably $750,000 to $800,000 for that vacation. I always say this, I don't have any girlfriends, I don't do drugs, I'm not an alcoholic, but I have way too many homes and I spend way too much on travel, okay? But I decided early on that I don't like to travel economically. So if I'm gonna travel, I want the hotel suite that I want to travel in, or I won't go. It might sound like a big number, but it more has to do with just the fact that if I'm gonna go somewhere, I want to enjoy it. I want it to be the best experience it could be. And then my travel tip to everybody, I tip when I get there. Like the first thing I do when I either get to a restaurant for the first time or when I get to a hotel property for the first time.
How much do you tip when you get to a restaurant?
The first time I've ever gone there, probably $1,000. But when I get to like a hotel, if we're staying at the hotel property, probably 10 times that amount at the start. If I'm going to be there for 4 or 5 weeks, to ask for the experience first and then tip at the end, nobody knows what your expectation is, right? But if you tip at the beginning, then they know what level of expectation you have.
I've heard you have a thing for watches.
Yes.
So I want to hear about your watch collection.
This was actually something my dad told me. When something important happens in your life, have another action that coordinates with it. And you'll always associate those two things together. Create a memory around the event. So early on, mine was watches. And the first company I sold, I bought myself a watch. And so over the years, it's not so much that I love watches, but I associate a watch with a memory of something financial when we have a success. We just did this partnership with Riva, and Hublot makes a watch that's in aqua. It's kind of an aqua color, very similar to the Riva colors that's in their boats. And so when we did that, I bought the watch to remember my good relationship with the folks at Riva Boats.
So they say it's rude to ask what things cost, but as a Wall Street Journal reporter, that's literally the only thing I want to know.
Okay.
So how much is your watch collection worth?
So I tell my children that there's 2 things when I'm dead don't forget about. The watch drawer, okay, and the wine cellar. I would say there's probably 40 watches. The most expensive ones are probably 150. So I'm going to say probably $2.5 million is the right number.
I've been admiring your fits on Instagram, so I have to know, how much did you spend on your wardrobe last year?
Probably a couple $100,000. Not more than 200. But the one thing about clothes is like it's cumulative, right? If you buy, it's not like you buy them one year and they're gone, right? So cumulatively, it's a big wardrobe. But we're all allowed one vice, aren't we?
I don't even think that's a vice. If you think I had a lot of questions for you, we have even more questions from our subscribers.
Oh, great.
If you enjoyed this is just one segment in our broader show, which you can now watch on WSJ.com. Subscribe now, and we might just pose your question to our next millionaire.